Are custom bikes worth it? What inspires us to keep making YouTube content? Is there a tire that is both supple and puncture proof? All these questions and a lot more in this Q&A session. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're into the non-competitive side of cycling, gravel exploring, bike touring, the supple life, you have found your people. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when we release a fun new video. And as always, with the Q&A session, if we answer your question, please email us at pathlesspedled@gmail.com and we'll send you a free sticker pack so you can spread the supple life. So before we jump into this week's episode, I just want to give you guys a heads up of a cool bike contest. No purchase necessary, but one lucky person will win the ultimate gravel bike. It's a contest put on by our friends at Redshift Stem, and they put together a pretty sweet bike. I think MSRP for this build would be about $8,000 to $10,000. And the bike frame itself is by Pivot. It has SRAM components, Boyd wheels, a power meter, bags from Apidura. So totally pimped out, absolutely free to enter. If you're interested, check out the link in the description below. So speaking of ultimate bikes, Bill Kane, I'm not gonna print his long email, but essentially asks, are custom bikes worth it? As you guys are aware, Laura is in the process of getting her custom dream bike, and it's gonna cost a pretty penny. Definitely the most expensive YouTube video we're gonna produce on the channel, but is it worth it? She can't answer herself yet because of course it hasn't arrived, but we have been talking a lot about why ultimately she wanted to get a custom bike and why we went with Breadwinner. So first thing, there's no doubt about it, a custom bike is just expensive. And it's not as if we rolled over one morning and decided, hey, let's go get a custom bike. You know, this is about 15 years in the process. Me personally, I can still remember the days when a $500 bike was really expensive. The first tours we did, Laura actually traded in a Walmart special. We went to a bunch of bike shops and tried to find a decent touring bike for under 500 bucks. And ultimately she got a Specialized Cirrus that was on clearance. It was a couple years old, and that's how we started. So it's not like we had super rich taste and we're just like throwing money at bikes from the very beginning. Me personally, we used to live in Long Beach, and I would go to the high-end road shop, King's Bicycles in Seal Beach. And at that time, the bike of my dreams was a Bianchi Volpe. It had that nice Celeste green color, and looking back, it was probably the least expensive Bianchi that they had. I think it was about $800. But for me at the time, at that life stage, it was a king's ransom. So things like value and price, is it worth it? I think it really depends on, you know, what resources you have available. What's expensive for me could be totally cheap for someone else. I think it also depends a lot on your life stage, on how long you've been into bikes. Definitely don't think it makes sense for someone that is brand spanking new to bikes to go and get a custom one, because you won't really understand why it's special or why it's different. So who should get a custom bike? I think if you've got the money and you can buy one responsibly, then definitely get one if that's what you like. I think another good candidate for a custom bike is someone with body proportions that isn't served well by stock geometry. So if you're really short, or if you're really tall, if your ratio to torso to inseam and it doesn't fall within that average range, then definitely a candidate for a custom bike. If you have a bike with a very specific need that the bike industry doesn't serve, I've actually in the past had a custom bike built by Blinky, and it was a front-loading cargo bike. At the time, these bikes were totally not available in the US, so I had one built by them. Yeah, very specific need, not served by the bike industry at large. And for me, it was part of my business, so well worth the investment. And going back to that business aspect, we've made a living off of our YouTube channel, off of our webpage, which is all about bikes, for over a decade. So bikes are not only our passion, but it's also part of our business. You know, we're gonna write off the custom bike. So it's really just kind of part and parcel of our lifestyle. I also definitely think that there are some models of bikes which are better served custom than stock. So for example, sport touring bikes, randonneur bikes, certain types of gravel bikes. So bikes that are both kind of still lively and interesting to ride, but can carry things. That's the kind of bike that the bike industry doesn't do very well. They do road bikes really well, they do mountain bikes really well, but that niche in between where the bike is both light and lively, but also useful, supple bikes basically, are great candidates for a custom bike. So for example, if you look at the Breadwinner and you look at something like the Gorilla Monsoon, they look very similar, right? Both take kind of knobby 650Bs, both have a segmented fork, but when you hop on both of them, the riding experience is completely different. We're talking weight. The Gorilla Monsoon, great bike, but definitely on the heavy side at about 28 pounds. In terms of handling, it was, I would say, overly stable, took a lot more to get going. Whereas the Breadwinner, definitely a lighter and livelier feel, but still had all the utility. Another good example of this is the Mazzi Randonneur and the Northern Lion ultralight rando bike I got a chance to review. So both of them, again, look very similar, have that randonneuring aesthetic, both meant to carry a front load. But when you ride them, they're completely different. That version of the Mazzi Randonneur definitely had heavier tubing and just kind of lacked that same springiness that the Northern Lion did. So again, these two bikes look very similar, had a similar form and function, but just with the material choice and specific geometry tweaks, rode night and day different. The Northern Lion was super springy, super lively. It actually had an upper weight limit of 180 pounds because the tubing was so light. And a bike like that is definitely something that you won't see mass produce. Just because the materials are a little bit more difficult to work with, the tubing is thinner, and also mass-produced bikes have to kind of appeal to the lowest common denominator. So they have to assume that people are going to really abuse them, put stupid heavy loads. Whereas a custom bike, the customer knows what they're getting into. They're going to know what the limits are of that bicycle. So I hope that answers your question, Bill, and you guys that are wondering if the custom bike is worth it. I'm going to get Laura on camera after the bike gets delivered and she's had a chance to ride it, and have her talk about what the differences are between the Breadwinner and other bikes she's tried. So next question by Christian Griffith. If you rode Dirty Kanza with 700C wheels, what tires would you use? So we did ride Dirty Kanza with 700C wheels. And the tires that I used were the Soma Cazadero 700 by 50. Highly recommend them. Laura rode with the WTB 700 by 45 Riddlers, and both of them performed pretty well. They were supple. We didn't get any issues with flats or tears. We both ran them tubeless, had sealant and all 9 yards. And I think both of those tires are great candidates for Dirty Kanza. Next question, the YouTube related question from Adventures with Daniel is, what inspires you to keep making content? So one big inspiration, I know this is gonna sound cheesy, is you guys. I feel like there is a big, vast market of cycling enthusiasts that is underserved on YouTube. And people like myself that love bikes but aren't really interested in racing or the ultra performance aspect, but are into things like basket packing and safety pizzas. I want to make content that interests me and also present it to other people of like-minded interests. Another thing that inspires me is comments from you guys when you relate to our own troubles or the things that we're experiencing. It's good to know that we're not alone in finding our place in the big world of cycling. And lastly, another big motivator is to make this into a full-time thing. I know it's possible, it's taking a lot of work, where you're slowly getting there, but a big inspiration to me personally is a channel like Seth's Bike Hacks. To see him take something as intimidating as mountain biking, but really break it down, really make it educational, entertaining, and useful to the masses, and also make it a viable living. Another related YouTube question is from Code Orgil. Hey mate, could you maybe talk about your story and how you first got sponsorships with the brands, or like gear review for your YouTube channel? So first thing you gotta know is a YouTube channel, you may have discovered it recently, but Path Less Pedaled as a brand, for lack of better words, or as a website, has existed since 2009. We had the website way before the YouTube channel. I actually had multiple bike blogs, my own personal bike blog, which kind of covered bike commuting in Los Angeles and running a business by bike. Also Epicurean Cyclist, that kind of focused on touring back then, before there were many bike touring specific websites. And even with that history, it's still been a challenge to get a hold of product to review. I know you guys love the channel, but in the grand scheme of things, we are pretty small. So there are definitely brands where I've reached out to and they've either not replied or they've said no, which is fine, because there are many other brands that have been willing to work with us. In terms of sponsorships, we are not paid by any brand. I want to make that pretty clear. We're not on like monthly retainer from anyone, except for you guys. We saw early on that there's maybe a handful of brands out there that have resources to actually pay people. And of that handful, there are very few that would want to support us financially, since we don't race. We're not on the podium, we're not super extreme or anything like that. So we made the decision early on that we're not going to rely on monetary sponsorship from brands, but really try to garner support from the people that are directly consuming the content. So when you guys sign up for Patreon or PayPal or buy a patch, you guys are sponsoring us very directly. But let's say you want to start a YouTube channel, do something similar. You got to know that there's going to be a lot of rejection. You're better off starting by creating content around gear that you already have, that you already own, and try to fine-tune those skills, your presentation skills, your filming skills, and build up a library of work that you can then use to show to a brand to say, hey, this is examples of reviews I've done, there's good response, I have a good audience. Would you like your stuff reviewed on my channel, my outlet, whatever? So definitely start with what you got. Don't expect the brand to just shower you with product. I mean, that's totally not what happens now. We do still get rejected a lot, or just no replies, and it's just a work in progress. Troy Curie asks, can you talk about tires that are puncture proof and or supple, and what is the best combination of suppleness and puncture proof for particular conditions? So this is a tricky question because you can't really have both. A supple tire, by definition, is going to have a thinner casing, is going to be more compliant, and therefore sacrifices some, sidewall protection. I think maybe a tire that tends to do a good balance would be something like the Pan Racer Gravel Kings, but personally, I don't like how they ride. I feel like they just go a smidge too much on the puncture protection and ride a little dead to me compared to other tires. But tires that I like so far, Soma Casderos, I talk about those a lot. The Specialized Pathfinder Pros, and also we've had really good luck with tires from Terravale. So I'm running the Coronados on the Jones bike, and I've also used the Elwoods a fair amount with the Velo Orange. So that's a good place to start. Again, it's kind of risk and reward. You can't live the supple life without, a little bit of risk of flattening out or tearing a sidewall. So far, knock on something, that has not happened to us. But if I do stumble upon that perfect tire, that grail tire that somehow manages to combine both suppleness and puncture protection, I will let you guys know. Worth432 asks, steel versus carbon, or steel bikes better? Subjective, obviously, but can steel bike be as fast and nimble as a carbon bike? I would say most definitely yes. I think qualities like nimbleness really come down more to frame geometry than purely frame material. So for example, you could have a carbon bike which has really slack geometry, and it's not going to turn or react as quickly as a steel bike with a lot tighter geometry. I think the biggest differences are going to be weight. Carbon bikes are going to tend to weigh less. And although some carbon can do some vibration dampening, I think when you compare carbon with just nice steel, the steel is going to outperform the carbon in terms of just that kind of eliminating road buzz and long-term fatigue from the stiffness of carbon. I think this topic definitely deserves its own video, so look for that in the future. So David Cummings asks, you have used front bags in many styles with and without racks. The Northern Lion with its classic rando rack and bag, the Ruthwork bag. Do you have a preference, or should they best be described as different tools for different jobs? It's a great question. We have a ton of bags here in our apartment, and I definitely view it as different tools for different types of riding. So the Ruthworks bags, I like it for day rides, or when I'm filming a bike review, it's just big enough to carry the stuff I need to make those kinds of videos. A close second is the Swift Industries Paloma bag. I love that bag. It's got good volume, it's super stable, easy to get in and out of, but it does require a click fix adapter, so that kind of just lives on one bike. I think probably my most used combination, the daily driver, is a small rando rack with a basket, and currently the Reload Waldo basket bag. It's just such a great bag for running errands, dropping things off at the post office, picking up groceries, and also the versatility of a basket. I can remove that bag and put waders and boots and use it when I go bike fishing around town. Paul A. Steckler asks, clipless or not when touring? We've toured in both, but now I just go with flat pedals. I think it's easier in terms of doing stuff off the bike. You know, we like to do other things like go fishing, go into town, go to museums and what have you. And it's much easier to just have one shoe that you can both ride in and do off the bike stuff in. I'm gonna end with a bike advocacy question. Matthew Gwynn, my town is at the confluence of 5 rail trails, only one of which is developed. Lengths vary from 10 to 35 miles. Townies are not bike people. They're getting federal money to redo the streets, which means installing bike lanes, and people are upset because of the loss of parking spaces. Also, 2 of the 3 trails cross state lines into New Hampshire. What's a good strategy to build value in these trails and convince townies it's a good idea? It's a great question. I don't talk a lot about this stuff on the YouTube channel, but that's actually like a whole nother part of what we do, our advocacy work. I travel a lot to give presentations about this whole thing called bicycle tourism. So, you know, the economic benefits of being bike friendly, of attracting cyclists into your town, whether that's, you know, loaded bike touring, destination riding like gravel loops or mountain bike loops, to event rides, all that stuff. You know, as cyclists, we tend to think of those just from the fun perspective, but you can also flip it on its head and present it as an economic driver for a community and get people that are generally not cyclists kind of excited about cycling. So to that end, we developed some explainer videos that we like to show at presentations and share with communities that helps explain this notion of bicycle tourism. So I'm going to put those links in the description below. That would be a good place to start. If you can find an elected official or a business that is supportive, you know, share this information with them, get them talking about them, show them that there are examples where bicycling has completely revitalized small communities. Another thing to do is share with these same folks some economic studies that have been done that do show bikes improving communities. There's a great list of them on adventure cycling. Again, I will put that in the link in the description below. So that's where I would start, is to just, you know, find potential champions, groups that would be supportive of this, share some of the information, get them speaking the same language, the arrows pointed in the same direction, and then hopefully that will get enough people interested to at least consider the possibilities of bike tourism in your town. Next step, you know, you could get us out there, do some presenting. You can show and share some case studies and stuff like that. Thanks again for all the people that ask questions. Email us at pathlesspelled@gmail.com. We will send you a sticker pack. And if you guys have questions that you want answered in future Q&As, leave those in the comments below or look for it in the community post. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and keep the supple side down.